Welcome to this episode of Author Eke. I'm Travis Davis, your host. Tell us your story. Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Author Eke. Today I have Reid Galbreath here, and he's going to talk about some things that he uncovered in California in a book that he wrote, What Are the Odds? So I'm going to go ahead and let him introduce himself, talk about the book, give a background to see that what he put in that book comes from a very credible individual. So, Reid, go ahead. And by the way, I want everybody to know that we both are published through Defiance Press and Publishing. But go ahead.
Hey, Travis, thank you so much. Had a blast hanging out with you in Texas a couple of weeks ago. Actually meeting you in person was pretty awesome. So I came to Defiance Press because I wrote a book about my experiences as a whistleblower with California State Lottery. A little background on me. I worked in law enforcement for 13 years, was a sworn police officer, state investigator. I have a long background working in security, law enforcement, investigations, was a licensed private investigator in California, handled countless investigations, worked for a few law firms, testified in court, all that fun stuff.
Oh,
wow. Born and raised in California. So actually was born in Stockton, raised in Sacramento. Kind of came from a background of public service. So family was all military, law enforcement, teachers. Was pretty much destined to go into some type of public service. And when I hit
little did you know.
Oh, 100%. And that was where I was at. I was at this crossroads in my early 20s, and it was either going to be law enforcement or military, and chose to go the law enforcement route. And that's what eventually led me to the state lottery. Felt it was a very noble calling to be an investigator and try to safeguard money that was intended for public schools, which I don't care where you're from, whether it's Texas, California, or any other state, the public schools need funding. So I was happy to be a part of trying to protect that.
Yep. Excellent. Excellent. So when did you write your book?
So I actually wrote my book. What's interesting is it was kind of a full circle thing. And I started writing the book in 2016. So through my whistleblower activities, I was actually suspended by the state lottery, and they essentially put me on house arrest. So Monday through Friday from 8 to 5, I was not allowed to leave my house except for a 1-hour lunch break, and was under surveillance from the state. And had I actually violated that, it would have given them grounds to terminate me. So I had a lot of free time. So between catching up on some old shows and some PlayStation games I never had the time to actually play working, I sat down and I started actually writing out all of my experiences, because I knew that it was a story that I wanted to share, and I wanted to make sure that I got it out there. And being completely honest, I ended up taking a hiatus from it for several years. And I finished, I'd say, about 60% of it, and then just kind of went out. And once everything was finally settled, left law enforcement, cleared my name, knew that pretty much my law enforcement career, my public service career was over, because as soon as you disclose that you're a whistleblower, all of a sudden the person on the other end of the table,
persona non grata.
Yeah, hold on a second. We're not actually interested in you working for us.
Here's my only Latin, persona non grata. That's the only Latin I think I know.
Well, there's two that I know, and I can never pronounce it correctly, but I'm gonna move just a little bit so I can read it to you. And that is que custodiet ipsos custodes, and that is who watches the watchers. And that was actually a present that I got from my best friend and his wife when my book launched, because it went with the whole whistleblower persona and the book. And persona non grata was the only other Latin term that I knew up until that. And I still can't pronounce it right.
Yeah, it was, especially, it's very timely today, given, all the whistleblowing that's going on by our ISR or IRS agents and DOJ and other folks. So I mean, whistleblowers play a significant role in watching the watchers, right?
Yes.
And it's so tell us a little bit about your book, how it kind of came about. How did you say, you know what, something is wrong, it's just not right?
Well, I'll tell you, the thing that really kind of kicked me in the butt, made me start finishing it, was Kamala Harris.
Mhm.
So Kamala Harris ended up being this poster child for the Democratic Party, where, look at how amazing she is, and her background as a prosecutor, and essentially the epitome of honesty and integrity. And I found myself kind of screaming at my television when all of this was going on. And what really was the deciding factor for me was the Vindman situation. So
Yep.
you had Vindman, and here's Kamala Harris talking about how we have to protect whistleblowers, and whistleblowers need to be heard, and all of these other things. Well, I'm sitting in my living room and recalling everything that I went through, and Kamala Harris's DOJ actually represented the state lottery against my lawsuit.
Oh,
So
wow.
her DOJ did that. She actually had a legitimate complaint from my deputy director at the time about the lottery misappropriating public funds.
Mhm.
And instead of doing her job as attorney general and investigating it, she played politics. She wrote him a letter, told him to turn his concerns over to local law enforcement, which they would never in a million years investigate a state agency.
Mhm.
And then out of nowhere, he was removed from his appointed position, and the highway patrol was brought in, and all of this involved Kamala Harris.
Right.
So here you have this person that actually has a track record of not only failing to support whistleblowers, but protecting the government entities that actually were named in their complaints.
Mhm.
So that kind of inspired me to sit down, finish that book, and then this thing called COVID happened. I don't know if you heard about it, but
Well, not as
they
much as I live in Texas, so not as much as some other states, but yeah.
this is true. And the hardest part for me was I worked for a job where actually at the time I worked pretty much every day of 2020.
Mhm.
And then in 2021, I actually got a little more time. I was working from home. And so at that point, obviously the election had happened. We were at the point where Kamala Harris was getting put on this pedestal even more. And that really inspired me to finish the book, because I wanted to make sure that the story was out there, because they're really, every voice that tried to discuss the failures of Kamala Harris got dismissed, because either they were labeled as racist, or they were labeled as spreading misinformation, and it wasn't
Misogynist. Yeah.
misogynist exactly, and it wasn't hard to do because the track record was there.
Right.
But we ignored the track record. So for me, without even considering the track record, it was the fact that my situation directly involved being a whistleblower, and quite frankly, you had somebody who was on a national stage being a hypocrite.
Well, I
So
think that's
that
typical with a politician, no matter what party they belong to. They talk out of the side of their mouth or their neck, right? Double
100%.
speaking out of the side of their neck. So a I don't pay him any attention normally. But then you talk about COVID. I think I started working from home in 1999. So I think I was like the pilgrims coming to the United States on Plymouth Rock as far as work from home goes. People are like, "Oh, how do I work from home?" What I go, "Well, you work like you would in an office, but you go to Kroger to have your interactions, or you go out and talk to people. But it's the same thing. You do your work. I mean, to me, it was like simple. If I had to go back and sit in an office, I'd be a caged animal. But I mean, I think you're right about their people need to start keeping those politicians accountable. I don't care who they are about what they say in public, but do behind the public. until somebody comes out and says something about they like there's current whistleblowers, the party that they don't favor is like, oh, these are unbelievable, right? But then you look at some folks like, Vindman. I think he broke his oath of office as an officer in the United States Army, to be honest with you. And that's just my personal opinion, but yeah.
Well, and that was the issue I had with that case is in the grand scheme of things. And when you go back and you look at, being a whistleblower, I often equate it to being part of a fraternity because it does take a lot of guts. And I know what I went through, and I dealt with corruption. I dealt with misappropriating public funds, and there were times that I won't say my life, but certainly my safety and my reputation were absolutely threatened by
Mm-hmm.
government officials. And I know what I went through. I can't imagine how hard it is to be somebody that discloses something that affects politics on a national level or big business. I mean, there was a really good case, and forgive me, her name is escaping me, but there is a woman that worked in the banking system.
Mm-hmm.
And you talk about whistleblowers should have bipartisan support.
Mm-hmm.
The reason that they don't is because you have one political party that sees that whistleblower as a tool that they can use to further their agenda, whatever that might be. And a
Yep.
lot of times we get so hung up on agenda is a political agenda, and you're trying to push identity politics and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't go that far. A lot of times, agenda is much more short-sighted. It's the person's credibility, their stock. What can they do to make themselves look better? And this particular whistleblower disclosed that the banking systems, and I bring this up because I think it's really relevant to what's going on
Mm-hmm.
now. She brought up the fact that the banking systems were knowingly ignoring suspicious activity reports. And these were some of the really big banks, some of which have since been named in lawsuits
Mm-hmm.
involving the Epstein cases. And she was prosecuted because basically, I guess some of the documents that she leaked, she shouldn't have leaked. Um, and she got convicted, and I think she was sentenced to 5 to 10 years in prison. So most of this happened 2015, 2016. So this was during Trump's
Right.
presidency. And what was really interesting watching the whistleblower community is a lot of these guys were adamant that what this whistleblower exposed
Mm-hmm.
was primarily affecting Republicans. So that's why Trump didn't give her a pardon. And thank goodness Joe Biden's here because he's going to ride in on a horse and save the day and pardon her.
Mm-hmm.
And lo and behold, he didn't.
Right.
So if that tells you something, especially when you look at what's going on with our current IRS whistleblower and what's being disclosed as far as holding back information and not taking enforcement action, I think it's very relevant. And this particular whistleblower, and again, I'm guilty of it myself. I can't remember her name off the top of my head, but
Mm-hmm.
she hasn't been introduced to this discussion. And I would say that based on the number of suspicious activity reports that are being discussed with Hunter Biden, her case is extremely relevant today.
Yeah, I would think so. I mean, it's crazy. So being a whistleblower, what was it when so you blew the whistle, you exposed corruption within the lottery system, uh, paying people incorrectly or fraudulently. Is that about right?
Yes. So the way the lottery system works, and when I break this down, most of us have been to Las Vegas or Atlantic City or someplace where you can gamble.
Mm-hmm.
So you walk into a casino, you and I are friends. We both have $20. So we put $20 into two different slot machines. In theory, you and I should have the same odds at winning a jackpot. The government oversees gambling and gaming, and they have very strict regulations on what these different casinos are supposed to do. The problem with the government run lotteries is they don't have the same requirements for the people that are selling lottery products. What this does is it makes trying to identify a legitimate winner difficult. And then the other component to it is it gives the lottery the ability and the discretion to spend public money in a manner that they would if it were a private entity. So what happens with that is if I were to go to you as my business owner and say, hey, I want to pay $1.9 million out of our general fund.
Right.
You would probably require some sort of justification. You would require a detailed
A
explanation of
loan.
why
I
I'm
would
paying
have to
out
have
this
a
money.
loan.
That too, because certainly I would. But,
So I'll give you 20. I'm good for 20. So
all right, let me write that down. Do not ask Travis for $1.9 million. I got it. We're good. We're good. Um, but that's so there should be regulation and oversight. The problem is that the lottery started a pattern of having people who submitted tickets, and we're not talking chump change. There's one case discussed in my book that's $750,000. There's another that's discussed at 1.9. That's 1.9 million. These were cases where there was no legal authority to pay the person who received that money, and lottery management chose to do it anyway. So they diverted money that would have otherwise gone to schools. So the way that the state lottery is supposed to work is you have all of these prize pools. So you have Powerball, you have Mega Millions, you have the majority of these lottery games that we all are familiar with. And the way it's supposed to work is a percentage of the sales is automatically diverted to public funds, public schools, and any unclaimed prizes traditionally were put into that same coffer. So if you had somebody that had a ticket for $1.9 million and they didn't claim it, that 1.9 went back to the public schools. And we all know that they need that money. So what the lotteries started doing is creating things like second chance lotto. So instead of diverting that money into the public school system, they took it and they diverted it back into prize pools. Then they had a very low threshold of what was required to prove that you were a lawful winner in all of these cases. So the lottery, with the lack of oversight, was not only paying out prizes that they had no legal authority to pay out, they were also acting with complete autonomy to enter into questionable agreements, do no bid contracts, bringing in people that are bringing in companies to do things like audit the lottery based upon just a recommendation from an internal auditor, as opposed to actually putting someone through some sort of screening process. When all was said and done, which it took several years for California State Auditor, the person who's supposed to watch the watchers. But they sugarcoat how they do things. So they don't come out and actually disclose everything. And they, instead of having a wide scope for a investigation, they have a very narrow scope. So when the auditor went back and looked at just 2 years of the lottery spending public money with a lack of oversight, they found that the lottery had actually misappropriated $69 million.
Holy smokes.
And what's interesting about that is that wasn't even including the multiple cases that I had given to the state auditor, along with my partner, Jim. We wrote a 17-page complaint, and we detailed every shortcoming that the lottery had, everything that they were doing that was in violation of state law, as well as in violation of lottery regulations. None of that was covered in the state auditor report, and they still found $69 million that should have gone to public schools.
Wow. And have they corrected? I mean, have they changed their behavior or?
Well, the funny thing is, and again, everything is relative. So when you say that California is and let me stop myself there. When Gavin Newsom says that California is the example that the rest of the country should follow, just a little glimpse of what California politics looks like. There have been several bills introduced to require the lottery to repay that money, and also require additional oversight so that the lottery had somebody that was actually giving them proper oversight. One thing that I forgot to mention, the state controller's office in California is supposed to oversee the state lottery. The auditor's office found that the state controller's office was actually letting the lottery review their investigative reports and make changes prior to actually submitting them and making them
I wonder if they
official.
went to work for the FBI.
It's funny you should mention that. I wouldn't be surprised. and and all of this was mentioned in the state auditor's report.
Mhm.
And so obviously you can't trust the government agencies to properly oversee the government agencies. I know that's shocking. I can see the shock
Yep.
and disgust in your face right now.
Yeah.
Um, but
Well, that's my
you
normal
can't trust.
face. Hey,
Well, it's
I
the
got.
complete lack of
I
response
have
I'm
a
referring
face of.
to.
I have a face for radio. So.
I can relate to that, my friend. It's okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, the when you have no actual oversight,
Mhm.
you then trust your elected officials. And your elected officials, in the state senate, they're supposed to be the ones that are introducing legislation to address these issues
Sure.
and force change. And the problem you have in California is that every bill that's been introduced to either force the lottery to pay back the money or change oversight has died.
Sounds
Either
about right.
yep, withdrawn by the person who introduced it, or couldn't get enough votes. And so basically, the auditor's report was released in 2020. It is now 2023. We're more than halfway through this year, and I've been routinely following it. Even though I don't live in California anymore, I
Mhm.
still it's something that's near and dear to my heart. So I kind of want to know what's happening
Of
with it.
course.
And nothing. There's been no movement whatsoever with that since 2022. And now you look at the national stage where we have a political family, call it a political dynasty if you want to, whatever. You have a political family that is actually being proven to engage in questionable activity, potentially illegal activity.
Mhm.
You have influence peddling. You have all of these shell companies that are moving money around and federal tax evasion and things that would get you and I thrown into prison
Oh yeah.
tomorrow. And not
Lie
only is
on a
there
federal
not,
gun form. Lie on a federal gun form.
yes, and watch your door get
Yeah.
kicked down and get drug in.
Yeah.
You have 4 handguns and it's an arsenal. Anyway,
Yeah. Yeah.
I, I digress. But you have all of this happening on the national stage, and for me, what's really fascinating is it's playing out before our eyes, and no one seems to care. And even our mouthpieces in Washington
Mm.
D.C. There's a whole lot of shaking our fist in the air. This is despicable, and so on and so forth. But there's no action.
Yeah.
We literally have a whistleblower who you talk about being brave. I there's there's brave, and then there's what this guy is doing to have the guts
Mhm.
to put his own safety at risk. Because when you were going out and the people who are being named in this investigation, uh, you've got the most powerful office in the country.
Oh
You've
yeah.
got multiple government agencies that I guarantee you that guy is under constant surveillance right now,
Right.
just waiting for some kind of mistake.
Hmm.
And we actually have politicians that are sitting there calling this man a liar simply because he is disclosing corruption within their own political party. And that's what disgusts me about all of this is when you are a whistleblower, you take on you accept certain truths. And those truths are my life could end
Hmm.
either literally or figuratively in the sense that I may end up in prison.
Right.
The government could come out and they could say at any time, what you're saying right now is disclosing secrets or so on and so forth.
Hmm.
So you accept the fact that you could end up in prison for the rest of your life. You also accept the fact that your name is now attached to what you disclose. So for the rest of your life, anytime somebody plugs your name into Google,
Hmm.
they're going to find that you were whistleblower. So there's a lot that goes into this where you're not only sacrificing your safety, but you're also sacrificing your well-being because
Hmm.
I can tell you from experience, finding a job isn't necessarily easy when a good background investigator pops your name into Google and goes, oh, this person's a whistleblower.
Yeah.
So all of these things that you do to sacrifice and make sure that the truth is disclosed for the
Hmm.
greater good of the public, to have these politicians actively attacking you is despicable in a way that I can't even put into words.
Yeah. I think what happens is, irregardless of the party, so I think when they get to DC, they have their spine removed. I'm wondering why they just all of them just don't flip over sometimes, right? Because they have no spine, any of them, or very few, if that. But that's a topic for a different day. So would you do it again?
Absolutely. And here's the funny thing. I've been asked that a lot. And there were some friends that I gave up that were
Mhm.
in law enforcement and in government because, again, you go back to persona non grata.
Yeah.
You stepped outside. You're no longer one of us. And the true friends that I've had, the people who have supported me, we'll have that discussion. Obviously, we pour a couple glasses of whiskey and
Yeah.
sit there and drink, and you start talking about life. And I'll tell you, I would, because at the end of the day, I was not the type of person that could sit back, watch this play out in front of me,
Hmm.
and not say something in good conscience. And I'll tell you that the average whistleblower has the same drive, and that's what makes them do this. And there are plenty of people that know that what's occurring is wrong. They sit back, they see it, they know it's not right, they know it's
Hmm.
illegal, and they don't say anything because, hey, I'm 10 years away from retirement,
Yep.
or I'm only 5 years into my career, so if I disclose this, my career's over
You gotta be
now.
done. Yeah.
And I I don't want to say I don't understand that, because I absolutely do.
Hmm.
Having gone through what I've gone through, I completely get it. It is a
Right.
lot easier to just put your head down and not say anything. But I can tell you that despite the sacrifices, where I sit today, I feel good about what I did, because I was vindicated.
Hmm.
At the end of the day, even though the state auditor's report in California didn't disclose everything, they disclosed enough. And that was, for me, really good, because at least it forces that government agency to think twice before they take away
Hmm.
from, in my particular case, a entity that absolutely needed that money. Because I can tell you, when it comes to schools, uh, we need more education. We
Oh
need
yeah.
stricter oversight. There's a lot of things that we need, and if the funding's not there, it just doesn't happen.
Hmm. No, I agree 100%. That and you got to do that. So, uh, how do you? So you published the book. How do you market it? How do you get the name out? Um, so folks, and where can they find you? Where can they find the book? So how do you do that? Is that, to me, marketing the book it's ever evolving, right? On how you want to do it. Talking to different authors and coming up with some strange thing to be able to do to get the name out, because really you're branding yourself. When you write a book.
It's not easy, and that's the
Hmm.
thing is, I got really lucky early on. I mean, when I actually went to try to get the book published, I had several publishers who just either didn't return my calls or said, "Yeah, I don't think this is
Hmm.
on brand for us."
Right.
Simply because getting your book published as a whistleblower is very difficult unless you have national notoriety and you have the
Hmm.
proper support. So I was really lucky with Defiance. The timing worked out perfectly, and I was
Hmm.
able to get a book published. And if I'm being honest with you, it hasn't been 100% easy all the time. Early on, when I was trying to build interest for the book, I had a release date, and we were moving forward. I was actually developing a pretty active following on Twitter. I want to say I was somewhere in the ballpark of 3,500 or 4,000 followers, and I
Hmm.
was getting a lot of interaction, and things were good. But a lot of my tweets involve poking holes in statements that were made by Kamala Harris, because, again, personal experience, that
Right.
was
Right.
something that I drew from. And all of a sudden, I woke up one day and my account was permanently suspended. No warnings, no,
Oh,
you
wow.
violated your terms of service. Just I'm permanently suspended. And that kind of put a little bit of a pump the brakes a little bit on the
Mm,
traction. But
sure.
what I found is through self-marketing, networking, talking to people, that's really the best way that you can come up with new ways and new
Hmm.
ways to get the message out there and to actually get your brand out there.
Hmm.
And I got really lucky because early on in the release of my book, I was able to get in touch with Randy Sutton, and some of your listeners might know who Randy Sutton is, but he's a Las Vegas Metro lieutenant who actually retired and has been on Cops more than any other cop.
Hmm.
So if you watch reruns of Cops, there's a good chance you see Randy Sutton. So he's
Awesome.
actually, and also Casino. I don't know if you ever watched Casino,
Hmm.
but one of my favorite appearances is he's the cop talking to Al Pacino. I'm sorry, talking to Robert De Niro while Sharon Stone is upstairs clearing out her closet. So that's kind of
Hmm.
one of his biggest movie appearances.
Hmm.
So best-selling author, actor, somebody who's been on Cops. He actually invited me over to his house to drink bourbon and toast to my book being released a week after it came out. So I talked to him and I said, you've gone down this road. You've published your book. As far as marketing and everything else, what have you done? Did you have the support you needed? And he told me a lot of this does come from you. You have to get your name out there
Oh,
because
yes.
you can't rely on other people to do it.
No.
And if that's coming from someone, in my case, this is a guy who's an active Fox News contributor. So you can search his name, find him, find his books. And if you have him telling you that he's primarily working to put his name out there,
Hmm.
that kind of gave me the guidance I needed. And then I got lucky, that kind of stemmed into a few other appearances here and there.
Hmm.
I have gotten opportunities to go on a podcast and also live
Right.
radio interviews to put the
Right.
book out there. Launched a website. I'm still in the process of trying to get my own podcast up and running. And
Mm.
I'd say that the two things you need are drive and time.
Yes.
Those are the two, to me, those are the two biggest things you need to try to get your brand out there because uh, a lot of times it's hard, especially
Hmm.
working a day job. You work, you come home, and you've only got about 5 or 6 hours left in
Yep.
your day before you have to go to bed and try to start it all over again.
Yep.
And some days it's hard to
Hmm.
sit down and push out a social media post or pick up the phone and try to network yourself with some people or send out some emails. But there's good days and there's bad days with that.
Yeah. I mean, I was talking to one of the authors a while ago, and he told me what you got to do and what he does, and what I do now is I take an hour a day and I market, right? Because not only I'm trying to market the books that I have out now, I'm trying to write another book, and I have the podcast. Um, so trying to do all of that, and it's branding. You got to get your name out. Even I follow a lot of the prominent authors right now, and they're on Twitter all the time, right? They're posting all the time and things. So you got to be able to do that. Whether it's Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, Facebook, whatever, right? To be able to get your name out to the people that want to read what you have to, what you put in your books. So I think that's important. And you can get your book where?
So right now, Amazon's the primary retailer that has my book. So I am lucky to say that I was actually the number one new release of my genre across all
Outstanding.
platforms. So I actually, when my book came out, it was a number one new release for paperback, Kindle when the Kindle version came out, and then for the Audible when the Audible version was released. So
Excellent.
still get some traction with that. That's the primary way to find it. Do have a website that you can visit, which is www.reidgalbreath.com. And that's REID and old fashioned gal taking a deep breath. And
Awesome.
years of having to try to tell people how to spell my name over the phone. I gave up about 20 years ago. And, it's an old fashioned gal and she's taking a deep breath. There you go. And that's primary place where you can find it. I am on social media, WW Investigator, which is the whiskey and whistleblowing investigator. So do enjoy my whiskey as well as my whistleblower cases. So two of the things that I'm very passionate about. And I believe that there might be some opportunities coming down the road to pick up my book in some retail stores, but waiting to hear a little more about that before I say anything.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, it was fun hanging out with you in Comic-Con. I want to let people know that that was the first time they've ever been to Comic-Con, and people do dress up.
Oh, big time.
It's amazing.
And a lot of the effort that gets put into some of the things that these guys put on, I was impressed because there was a few that looked like they walked right off of a movie screen. And it was definitely an interesting event. It was my first time actually being in Texas ever. So I have absolute blast those 3 days.
San Antonio is a great city. So I'll tell the rest of the world, if you don't think that people get along, different walks, different races, different religion, go to Comic-Con. They all get along.
100%.
All
100%.
Everybody. There is no you're this, you're that. It's like, wow, that's a cool outfit. That's a cool superhero. Maybe that's not my thing. So I would highly recommend everybody go at least one time to see the true melting pot of America. Excellent. Well, Reid, I appreciate it. So folks, go check out his book. You never know, one day that you might decide, hey, there's stuff I need to get off my chest. And the only way to be able to do that is to blow the whistle on something. So have the testicle fortitude to be able to do that. So good for you. Excellent.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate that.
All right. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Absolutely.
Thank you for listening to Author Echo. There'll be another episode next week. Please stop by and start your own story. We can't wait to hear it.